Hello and welcome to the final episode of the Homegames podcast. My name is Joseph, and today is Thursday, January 2nd, 2025. I fully recorded an episode, kind of like our traditional podcast, with the whole opening and all that stuff. And when I played it back, I realized my audio settings were kind of messed up, and you couldn't hear half of what I was saying. So I have taken that as a sign from our Lord that I should just do a more off-the-cuff, just talking into a microphone about Homegames. So basically, Homegames is done. The project, the software, and all that kind of stuff is finished. The podcast has obviously kind of been done for a while. We did one episode. I did one episode last year, and I made one game and made a video about it. And that was pretty much all of the public-facing content that there was about Homegames. And it kind of seemed like a dead project, I would guess, if you were not me, for the entirety of 2024, basically. And the reasoning for that is around the beginning of last year, my daughter was about, 4 or 5 months or so, and I kind of realized at that point, like, oh man, this is kind of gonna keep happening, and she's gonna grow, and I have to be here and do stuff for that, and for her and my family, and I have to prioritize the rest of my life outside of Homegames. And then kind of looking at Homegames at that time, realizing that it was not something that could exist without me for a few different reasons. It was basically like impenetrable to understand the code base, to understand even kind of at a high level what the system was. The question, what is Homegames, has never really been solidified. A guy sent me a message on Reddit or something like that a couple years ago, or it was an email basically saying like, hey, I saw you post, or I ran an ad on Reddit just trying to promote the podcast. And he's like, I saw this ad, and it's like, what is Homegames? And it's like a genuine question. The person who took the time to ask the question, and I responded with like 5 sentences, just a brain dump, because I was so excited that somebody out there, like, even connected with the thing, even want to ask a question of what it was. But it was this manic brain dump of like, well, it's kind of like this, if you've ever played Jackbox, if you've ever YouTube, it's kind of like that, and everything's in JavaScript. I was constantly just giving details and not understanding like, who am I even talking to and for what purpose. Anyway, the reason of what I'm saying is, what is Homegames is a complicated thing, because the system as a whole is not something that most people can access, right? Like, I make a demo website that shows how to play, you can play these basic tests and games, and it's not something that regular people access. Regular people don't know that a .io domain is even a legitimate thing. Like, I told my mom, hey, go to homegames.io to test out this thing with me, please. She said, oh, it's not .com? It's like, yeah, okay, well, you got to remember, it's not, when I'm trying to just get regular people to be able to access this thing. I should have closed the window. I didn't close the window. I might have heard a car go by. Anyway, letting the room breathe or whatever, making it feel real. Anyway, my mom is the regular person. My mom is somebody who I want to be able to download and play Homegames. She is my target customer in a lot of ways. So, anyway, I'll get to that more later. But essentially, the project was just not something that most people understood. It's not something most people could change. It's an open source project, but what purpose does that serve if people don't know what it is or how to run it, and they wouldn't want to run it? And if they tried to run it, they basically need my exact AWS setup, or it won't work. When I say AWS setup, I'm talking about my Homegames infrastructure, the API, the publishing stuff, the database, all of the things that let game publishing happen, that let you download builds, right? All of Homegames that exists on the internet is basically AWS, or hosted on AWS, and the code for playing games and whatever, all that stuff is something that you run locally. The game server is something you run locally, but everything else was my infrastructure. And so if my infrastructure were to go down, if I don't pay my AWS bill because it was getting so expensive, if I whatever, then Homegames just ceases to exist, because I never put in the part that connects it to anyone except for me. Like, Homegames essentially was me for the entire time I was working on it, which at this point has been almost 7 years. The longest running project I've ever worked on. Never had a job for more than 4 years, a single one job at a time. It's just like the biggest thing I've ever done, the most cool, complex, and most personal thing. I made every part of the system pretty much, and it's just a cool thing to look at it and say, like, I know how this works completely. So anyway, 2024, I spent the time just kind of re-examining the components and simplifying them. Not everything needs to be an ECS microservice with a whatever. It doesn't need to have replication. It doesn't need to have perfect uptime and whatever. I don't need to pay for these crazy AWS services for a service that no one's even using. So can I replace these things with free open source alternatives that I can host myself, and looking into that stuff and really kind of re-understanding what Homegames was and what I had built over the course of several years of feature creep, of like, well, I guess we would need this, and I guess we would need this. And at some point I was building a microservice that would basically do antivirus. It was basically antivirus software, because I made a thing that lets you submit JavaScript that I run on my computer or my server or my whatever to validate that it can work on someone else's computer so that you can publish it to the Homegames catalog. Like, this is a system that I eventually made, just kind of going down the rabbit hole of Homegames. So you're like, oh, I'm building antivirus software. Like, what the hell am I doing? But it was cool, and it was a very fun experience, and I forget now why I'm even talking about that, the antivirus thing. It became complicated. Looking at the entire system became complicated, re-examined what it was, and re-examined just how it worked and the kind of current state of everything. And it's essentially finished. The original vision of Jackbox is really cool. I wish I could make my own game that let you do what Jackbox does, which is I'm running a game on my Xbox or my computer or whatever, and then there's a server code someone can type in from either inside the same house or in another place or whatever. And I want to be able to make a game that you can access in that way. And not only did I do that, I made the system that let other people do that and learn from how it works. And you can publish your own games. I made an interface that lets you make and submit those games. And like I said, I made an antivirus checker to make sure that you're not pushing viruses to my database. And it's like, it's such a cool thing. And now, as of 2025, the code base, none of the services depend on proprietary AWS services. I still use Route 53. I still use EC2. But those are regular things. They're not specific to AWS or exclusive to AWS. It's just how I plan to implement it, or how I implemented it. Anyway, so no more AWS stuff. So someone who is not me can deploy the entire Homegames infrastructure to something that is not Homegames, something that has no association to me. So if Homegames ever goes down, which I don't intend for it to, but in 100 years it's not going to be there, I promise. So at some point it's going to cease to exist, and I still want the system and the concept and the something to be taken from it for other people, because I've kind of made it already for myself. And that goes into the next thing, which is, like I said, it's finished. My goal was, like I said, just be able to play games. And last night, we did a demo with my in-laws, and it was, I think, a total of 6 people playing the demo. We were all doing hot potato on our phones, not even on the locally running Homegames server, but on Pico de Gallo, the public-facing demo website for Homegames. And I think Pico de Gallo, right, again, like I mentioned before, people don't know it's like .io is even a thing. So even telling my family, go to picodeg.io in a web browser on your phone is a hurdle. Like, it's already a hurdle. And just remembering, not everybody is a technical person. Not everybody's a weirdo on Twitter or whatever, So that was the biggest hurdle of the entire process. Once we did that, everybody was on the dashboard. There was a sound issue because most people have their phones muted all the time. At least in that house they did. So we unmuted their phones and we all played hot potato. And there was this moment where, it's simple. You tap the potato if it's on your screen, and it goes to someone else's screen. And if the potato explodes when it's on your screen, you lose, right? And it just worked. Like, people would tap it and they immediately got it. I didn't have to explain how the game worked. It was just, all of us joined this session. The sound was working perfectly over the game while the potato is active in your hand on your device. It's playing the sizzling, which is just me making that sound into a microphone, in case you were curious of how that game or how that audio works. And it was popping from every device, right? People on the couch, on that couch, people standing over here, and it's just hectic. And the potato is jumping everywhere, and people are just laughing. And it's like, what the fuck, dude? like that moment was everything I ever wanted to make with Homegames. And this is kind of after making all of these changes to the code base and making it kind of more of a proper open source, you can do something with this type of thing. And my daughter is 1, and we also played hot potato here at the house the other day, but we were playing it with my mom. I had her download and install her Homegames server on her Windows machine in her house, and we played with the session code over the internet from here, and my daughter was playing, and it's just like, a 1-year-old baby is having a good time with this thing that I made, and I can teach her how it works, and I can, when she's older, I can teach her how to make games, and we can make more games that are just for us. A week or two ago, we were watching an owl documentary. She's very into owls, and so I just replaced the image asset on the image test in Homegames. It lets you resize and drag around an image. And I replaced the image with an owl, and just clicking around and showing her how that worked. And it's like, okay, I am getting exactly what I need out of this system, out of this software. I don't need to impress anybody else. I don't need to impress myself or prove to myself that I know how to do something or that I can make a game or anything like that. It's just like, this is my goal. This was what I wanted to do. And the future of Homegames is essentially an iteration of that, or a version of that. I still personally think it would be fun to learn about 3D graphics. I personally think it would be fun to learn about iOS and Android development. And those things obviously have a part where they could meet Homegames, and maybe I can implement that stuff in Homegames, and maybe I can make a 3D game that you can play on an Android device from the game server or whatever. But, and maybe not. Maybe I do all those things separately. Maybe I just get into something else, like hardware or something. I don't know. I'm trying to do other stuff. But in terms of Homegames, it is a family toy that I can use to learn or help my daughter learn. Just have fun, play games. We're going to have a New Year's party tomorrow, a little late on New Year's, but it's an opportunity to test hot potato again, and maybe people want something different for our next party. Maybe they want me to make a small game, or maybe like a place in town is a bar or something, and they're like, hey, we see your stuff and we want to make a game themed around drinking Coors or whatever. It's like, cool, I can do that stuff for people that I care about, that are close to me, because that's the goal, right? That was the goal of Homegames, was to give something to people so they can connect with each other. I know that sounds super lame, but that was the goal, and we did it. I did it. And you can try it. I mean, if you're listening to this, you watching this, you can go to homegames.io and you can try out all of it. You can download a build. You can run the server on your Windows, Mac, or Linux machine, and you can play games on your phone, on your computer, on your tablet, and you can use it, because I certainly am, and I will. And I might do more stuff in the future. Yazid and I might do another podcast where we just talk about Spotify Wrapped and don't talk about Homegames at all. Or maybe I never do a podcast again, but this is it. And thank you. Thank you for listening to this, and for supporting the podcast, or for going to the website, even having the curiosity and in this project. And I hope you enjoy everything.